everyone, and welcome to a special edition of ARG Presents. I'm your good friend, your good buddy, Amigo Aaron, joined live and in living color by this crotchety grump of a man, this bear of a boy. Give it up for the Brent.
Hey,
What's going on, the Brent? We're back together again.
bears can be pets.
How long has it been since we were together filming an episode of ARG in the same facility?
Oh, I don't know. The days have been so glorious without it, I can't recall.
Yeah, it's been a long time. It's literally been years since we did a live ARG. We did the Thanks
board
for Giving
games and Thanks for
and
Giving,
stuff, but we haven't actually done an ARG. So this is very exciting. I'm very fired up today for some super fun action. Last week.
Oh, you're gonna be disappointed.
Well, you got a good point there. Last week we did spin the wheel. We made the deal, Brent, and there's the wheel right there. And this week, Brent, I'm excited about this one. We're gonna be playing games from the BAM. It's the Commodore Pet, Brent, the Commodore Pet. Now, before we got the Commodore Pet going here, what did you know about the Pet?
I definitely knew it existed, and that is literally it. I've never got to play with a pet. I've never interacted with it. I've never loaded one up on an emulator. So this week was 100% new.
Yeah.
And which is crazy because I love the 64.
Yeah.
Commodore 64.
I knew a little bit, but I had to go brush up on my brain patterns here. But I do have a little something to say about the old Pet here. So, here's what I like about Commodore, okay? Commodore changes with the times, all right? And sometimes when you force their hand, they treat you like garbage. They rule you like a king. That's what they do. Jack Tramiel at the head.
Yes.
He took no prisoners. Business is war. So Commodore was making a killing back in the mid-'70s with, guess what? Calculators.
Absolutely.
You weren't alive when calculators were like a really big deal.
Well.
No, I mean, they were a huge deal.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. No. And neither were you.
No, I was. I mean, you would have this thing in your hand. You're like, holy crap.
Yeah.
It was a big deal. And they weren't cheap, brother.
No.
Those things were costly. Yeah. And so Commodore was doing pretty good. Well, Texas Instruments was like, hey, how about a little of that sweet action for us down here in Texas? And so the chips that Commodore used in their calculators, Texas Instruments blew up the price on them.
Yep.
To the point where Commodore couldn't even play
good.
ball in that field anymore.
Yep.
So Commodore started looking around, and they found an outfit called MOS Technology, M-O-S Technology. And they'd been working on basically a drop-in replacement for the Texas Instrument chip, okay? And they made one, and then they got sued. Texas Instruments not happy. And so they made like the Diet Big K knockoff of the chip. And they changed it just enough so it would get past the law. Okay.
They thought that the moose.
And so that was your new gimmick, right, for your calculators. Well, listen, the calculator market, there was a genius fellow that worked for MOS Technology named Chuck Peddle. All right, you ever heard that name?
No.
He's a pretty famous guy. He was the big King Dong behind these new processes. And he told us, like, listen, these calculators are going to go by the wayside. You need to get into something a little more potent,
a little meatier.
That's right. And he's talking about the PC market. All right, now, if you're going to consider that the PC market in the late 70s was pretty low.
Yeah, there wasn't a PC market in the late 70s.
The whole PC market was real low.
Oh, really, really low.
And so, but I mean, you did have like the Apple.
Yeah.
And TRS-80 was dipping their toe in the pool. You had a few players.
It was just starting to happen.
That's right.
The ball starting to roll.
And so, of course, Tramiel listened to Peddle. They said, screw this. We're not going to this happen. And he bought MOS Technologies. That's a story for a whole other time because I've heard it was as shady as it gets from Commodore.
Commodore shady? I don't believe it.
Again, this is the company that would not pay for their molded cases, and then when the company that made the cases ran out of money, they'd go buy them. That was the shady crap they'd pull. So anyway, they bought MOS Technologies. They owned the chip maker. So now it was time to put together something. And so the early computers were sort of like a glorified calculator in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
They had the ability to have I/O with like a keyboard, like it was a real small gimmick. But you did have the ability to store stuff to tape. and there was an actual ability to put out a display, but they were real remedial, okay? And so they thought to themselves, hey, we've got something. These are selling pretty well. These little kind of kit, they're almost like a kit computer. So let's get into trouble here. And so they ended up releasing the very first Commodore Pet. Now, the Pet was an interesting beast. It was made of metal. Yes. All right. So this thing,
computer you can beat a man with.
I think I saw a Pet one time in person because they had one that came to my school one time. But that's the only time I've ever seen one myself.
Was a traveling pet?
What you got to think, back in the day, schools, they would go over the county to show these things. Like, we ended up getting a TRS-80 Model 1, I think it was. And so we had this computer. It was in one classroom when I was in middle school. In grade school, the only computers we had were like an abacus. We didn't have nothing. You know, of course, we're
still using stone tablets.
We knew what time it was to go home thanks to a sundial. When it was cloudy, we were at school for 10 hours. So anyway, so here comes the very first Pet. Now, when you look at this big metal beast of a machine, what you've got here is a big box for those listening on the radio with a kind of a what would you call it, trapezoidal monitor that sits on top?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And the original monitors, a lot of times when you think Pet, you think those monochrome monitors, and it was monochrome, don't get me wrong, but the original Pet was black and white. Black and white monitor. And it's funny, I read that Petal was getting it ready to show at CES, and they were as usual, in the true tradition of CES, they were at the last second trying to get this thing ready. And they had to go and buy a TV at a local hardware store to rig up for the video. Can you imagine that? I know, but that's so beautifully awesome.
That's very Commodore as well.
So it is. And so this thing, like I said, it was a hit at CES. They started making it. So you've got the kind of black and white monitor, and then you've got this keyboard. I got a picture here put up right on my screen. It was a keyboard that it looked like it was from another planet. It's completely rectangular, and there's no offset keys. All the keys are laid out just like a grid.
Yeah, they're true squares. And it's a bunch of squares to make up one big rectangle.
That's right. And then it's got a key. It's got a keypad on it. Like a number pad.
Yeah.
But there are no numbers over the letters.
No.
And it's also got all kinds of crazy symbols on it, which is also a Commodore tradition. So this is, by the way, good luck typing on this.
Oh, yeah.
I believe the original Commodore had a 4K memory, Pet, and so this is basically enough to hold a screen of text. For all intents and purposes, it's a very, and the OS takes up some of that screen area. So what would you do with the original Pet? Well, it could do programs, it could do basic, and also, word on the street is this was the first, if not the first computer to license Microsoft Basic. They had true Microsoft Basic on this thing. Something else I think is neat about these is you could pop them open like a hood of a car.
Yeah,
they fold back up, and if you've got a little gimmick like you'd have with the hood of your car, and it goes in a hole.
Yep.
It's pretty cool though. That's a great way to work on these things.
No, it's not. That's a horrible way to work on these things.
Its I/O was a tape deck that was built in, a la Dick Smith, built directly into the front of the case, and it was from what I read, Commodore just went out and bought a bunch of off the shelf tape decks, modified them, and just literally screwed them in.
Yeah,
and
I
the
can believe it.
front sticks out. Pretty cool. And so these end up doing pretty well. I should mention that in Europe, they couldn't use the Pet moniker. That's out. You know why? Trademark issues. I don't know if the Pet Rock was big in Europe or whatever it was. So they had to call it the CBM over there.
Horrible name.
Yeah, well, Pet's better. Pet stands for something, but no one, it's just Pet.
Yeah.
Let's face facts. That's what it is. So the original Pets did pretty well, so they had to come out with some more models. I was just telling Brett before the show, the Pet was numbered in ways that would kind of indicate what it could do. For example, if you've got a Pet that's 4016, all right, the numbers, that would mean it's 40 columns, 16K, right? If you had an 8032, that would mean you got an 80 column, 32K. That's the way it goes. Now they would end up coming up with gimmicks to increase the RAM and stuff. The original Pets had no audio at all. Okay, and so but someone realized you could hook up a speaker to a couple points in there, and you could generate some beeps.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, I guess, did this. So in future models, they would include a little speaker in there. But these things are a little bit like some of the old kit machines we looked at. People rigged up all kinds of crazy stuff. I even saw a guy that there's a way you could hook up the sound chip out of a C64 into these things, so you could have awesome sound. Now
that would be pretty
nothing,
cool.
Of course, nothing would support that.
Oh yeah, I mean you can write your own
I
stuff
saw. There's a demo. Believe it or not, there's a demo team that I guess it's like had demos, and this demo was awesome, and they had this rock and music, and that's what they'd done. They'd put the C64 sound chip in the machine, which is kind of cool.
Of course, when you get to that kind of modification, is it even a pet anymore?
Oh yeah,
it's kind of like a pet hybrid.
So, the Pet did well, like I mentioned, and it did well. Here's the real for us. Now listen, these were business machines, right? They weren't messing around. We're gamers. Like we don't care about business. Clearly, we've failed in that genre. But people took these Commodore business machines and they said, we're going to play some games. Well, these old Pets had zero graphics. Yeah. You couldn't generate graphics on it. So what you could do was, it's the old C64 and VIC gimmick.
Yep.
This is where it came from. It had a thing. They had all these symbols and stuff when it was ASCII, but it was Pet ASCII. They shortened it to Petsky. So if you ever heard the term Petsky, that's what it is. And this is what they would use to make various graphics on the machine. So everything you see graphically generated on the Pet is using all these
sprites.
Blocks and spades and all the stuff, little poker symbols and all the crap that you would have that's on the keyboard. That's what they made. It's actually there's a beautiful art to it in a way that's to be able to sit down and make something that looks like something effectively out of nothing.
Listen, if you've got someone that's good, that really has a mind for that kind of thing, you could pull off some amazing stuff.
Yeah, I agree.
Some amazing stuff. And you could also pull off a lot of crap, which is what you normally get.
Yeah, I think it was 256 characters that you had access to. I was watching a video of a guy, and he was talking about, so like these things came with tape drives, right? Well, you're probably asking yourself, hey, dummy, where's the floppy drive, right? They made a gimmick. So the Pet's got no expansion slots, none of that crap. They didn't have it. But what you could get was you could hook up through like the serial bus that goes on the back and hook up an external device, right? And so for a disk drive, much like, it's funny, this is a super funny thing that Commodore tends to do over and over. They had to make disk drives that were pretty much as smart as the computer because the disk drive had to do everything. It had to have the OS, it had everything. And so they
whole computer inside.
They came up with this external floppy thing that was almost as big as the Pet. And it had the same processor in it. If you can think about it, it has its own 6502 in the disk drive. Yeah. And it'd be this big, huge sidecar that you would get. And they
cost a fortune.
Oh yeah, and from what I read, you could put more than one drive in there. I think you could put two.
Yeah.
And
the six richest kings in.
Well, the Coco was sort of similar, but this thing's way bigger, by the way.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And but you could from the show I watched, I guess you'd have these in a lab, and so a bunch of people could use them at once. Sort of like a printer used to be back in the day. So you would have to get time on the disk drive. Can you imagine that? That takes you back when you have to do that.
Yeah, no, I can totally see that being something that happens. Absolutely.
So as the Pet got more advanced, because there were multiple versions of the Pet.
It ran for a while.
You lost that steel casing. They went with plastic. I will say,
you have to. You have to start cutting price, and that's an easy price cut.
Yeah,
easy price cut.
I was watching videos of people playing games, and you could tell which version of the Pet case they had, because when you typed on this thing or hit the buttons and played a game, it sounded like you were hitting like a kettle drum. It's like boom, 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 boom. It echoed through. I mean, it's such a cool sound, though. You know what I mean? Did you see that in any of yours?
Yes, yeah. I saw some people playing games when it was like.
Now,
less cracky, like you said, more thumpy.
One more thing I want to mention, and this is something else I saw on a show. So you know how you can do these peeks and pokes, okay?
Yeah.
There's a poke you can do, allegedly. In fact, I guess it's a done deal. If you type in the command poke 59458-62, you could screw your display up so bad that you could damage the pet. It's called the killer poke. It's a killer poke. I'm poking you. Yes! I wish I had one of those. So, listen, you're already damaged. So the killer poke, Paul Kitchen says he's done it a few times. You're out of your mind. And apparently sometimes they'll bake this into the software. The killer poke, somebody just being jerks. Yeah. So that is diabolical.
Can you imagine being in a magazine and because magazines, all those type-in programs, you throw that in there and then you publish that and little brats are on their dad's business machine typing stuff in, hit enter and kill the machine.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh. I would live in terror.
Yeah, no kidding, eh? So, the pets thrived. They were good sellers. They sat somewhere in the price range between the Apple and like the TRS-80. The TRS-80 owned the low end of the market. Of course, Apple, the tradition continues. You can't afford those outrageous prices.
Yeah.
So this thing sat somewhere in the middle. It was a good hit amongst businesses and schools. It got into a lot of schools. They have a version of this they call it the teacher's pet that they gave away to teachers. Great name. You had to do that, right?
Absolutely.
So, how were the games? Well, we looked at a couple games, but I looked at a bunch.
Oh, I looked at a bunch.
Then I chose the one I did.
Wow.
Yeah.
You didn't look at enough.
Well, I chose my game first. And what was those around? So
here's the thing.
Yeah.
A lot of pet games are text-based.
Yeah.
Text adventures.
Including, they had commercial releases.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Tons.
Yeah. And, but yeah, they also had a lot of clones.
Yes.
And as was the style of the time.
Yes.
And so you got to see every sort of Space Invaders or Star Wars knockoff or whatever, which is okay. But I will say they had some pretty impressive games given the limitations of the graphical abilities of the machine. I thought I thought it was. It's not. I don't think it's not as impressive as say the Model 2 and 3 stuff for the Tandy.
That's what I was going to say. I think while they did have some games that were impressive for the system, it was not one of these machines where you find exceptional software. Now, there might be exceptional software out there that I just didn't see. I probably looked at 30-ish games. I really went through a lot of them. Although I saw a text adventure, I clicked out and moved on.
Yeah.
I don't got time to get into those. And text adventures are, they're not system-based. They're just story.
Their games are readily available. It's funny, it loads just like a Commodore 64.
Yeah.
Load, quote, whatever the name of the thing is, quote, comma 8, comma 1. It's funny how that stuff carried forward. We should also mention that, of course, this did well and then moved. It was ultimately replaced with the VIC-20, which was a huge seller, which was ultimately replaced by the C64, which you saw. So Commodore, boy, moving into
you're missing a few steps, but yeah.
Well, those are the steps from this to the VIC-20 to the C64. That's the steps. That was the steps. Now they're going to throw some weirdness in there like that.
Yeah, 16.
Yeah, but believe it or not, I think that was after the 64. Yeah, listen, they did some weird stuff. Don't even get me started on some of the stuff. If you want some real wacky Commodore stuff, watch my magazine read along. They talk about a Commodore I never heard of that was only released in Japan. There you go. So we did look at some games, though. With all that said, the Brent, and I think we came up with some games. We came up with some games. I'm going to lead the dance this week.
There was at least 2 games.
I'm going to be curtain jerking this week.
Yes, you
try
are.
to calm your heart, as I discussed with you, Bam, about fire. Now, I'm not going to lie, that logo I used there may not necessarily go with the game, but I wanted to have something exciting to talk about. So,
if you look at that logo and think, man, I want to play some pinball, there might be a reason.
You know me, the Brent. I'm a sucker. I'm a take off. I'm a sucker for some top shelf graphical action. And I like to look through all this different stuff and find something that looks interesting to me. It looks different, unique. And I saw 2 games that really tickled my fancy. And I chose one of them. And the other one was a lawnmower simulator, which looked really interesting. And it ultimately had better graphics and was a better game. And I didn't choose that. No, sir. And I went down with the ship here. Let's talk about fire with an exclamation point. Developed by a fellow named Brian Sawyer. He is credited with 3 other games on the Pet. A game called Joust. And this is not the arcade game. This is like you actually are jousting with a sucker. A game called Everest, where you climb Everest.
That's got to be a mountain climbing.
This is a real interesting one too, because in Everest, there are numbers that make up the mountain, and the numbers represent the amount of energy it takes to get past that part of the mountain. And you've got a set limited amount of energy. Just you're going to plan your path up the mountain.
Why didn't we play that?
I don't know. And then he also did a sort of a ballyhoo game called Dungeon, which is a roguelike. This also looked great. So all these games looked great.
And then you picked
I picked this. This was released in January of 1980. Now this is interesting, Brent. This game was not a commercial release as such. This game appeared in Cursor number 16.
Yeah.
I was like, well, yeah, but I had to look and see what Cursor number 16 was.
Magazine.
Well, no.
Oh.
It was, but
Magazine,
it wasn't.
Oh, okay.
So the Cursor series, now get this. The Cursor newsletter was published by this outfit called the Code Works. It ran from July of 78 to May of 82. This was effectively a newsletter on tape that you could buy.
Oh, very interesting.
And so this sort of like, we all have magazines with tapes or with discs on them. This is sort of like the precursor to that.
Boy, that had to have been expensive.
Cursor had each tape had a magazine on, a short newsletter on it and then it also would have some programs on it. It was put together by Ron Jeffries and Glenn Fisher of the software company called the Code Works out of California. And each one of the issues would have a cover page. They did it up nicely. Just for fun, I looked at what was on the Cursor number 16 that Fire was on. And so here's what you got in Cursor 16. Just as a good side shot of what you would expect to get on these things. So you got something called Cover 18. It's called when you press any key, patterns will fill the screen with characters. And then if you hit a shifted space, it blanks the screen run again. So you can just do it over and over. All right. And then after that, the table of contents comes out to show you what's on the tape. Not that, but still, they put a little art into it.
Yeah, they did more than nothing, and that's acceptable.
I noticed that every one of these items have an exclamation point after them. So I don't know if that was the theme of this magazine or they were really excited. There's a game called Nab. It's you against the computer as you try to escape from a head-on crash.
Oh,
by
God.
Malcolm Michael. Then you've got Fire, and Fire is described as you pilot a fire department helicopter as you try to put out a blaze by Brian Sawyer, as we mentioned. Then there was Aliens. The aliens are attacking, but you can protect Earth by destroying them before they land. That was by Michael Hamilton. Then Bonzo. Randall Lockwood wrote this game of the Bonzo dog chase. That's all it's got for that one. And lastly, you've got Catch. Play Catch with the Pet by George Lodi, excuse me. And so then you could read your newsletter.
That's pretty good.
And that's it. So that's where this game came from. And I looked at a lot of games. From that.
Knowing that now, because I did not know that. I did not go into the history of your game. I loaded it up, got sad, and then closed it. I already think higher of your game now than I did before I sat down.
Listen, I got to play every angle. So
this is all just an elaborate ruse, isn't it?
It's funny because when you're investigating these games from way back, again, you got to think this was way back in 1980, early 1980.
Yeah.
All right, so you've got to try to find a description of your game. I had to go back and just read the newsletter.
Oh, Aaron, look at that. The exclamation mark means it has sound. It was a cursor thing that they did.
Oh,
Paul
there
Kitchen.
you go. Thank you,
Bravo!
Paul.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, Paul has a pet, and so
I have a pet.
And by the way, this did have the option for sound, so that makes sense.
That's awesome news.
Very good.
Thank you, Paul.
I read the description of my game, but I would go in a little bit more in depth. This is a
well, I'm glad you're going to go farther than they did.
So let's just get right into what this is. I mean, I tried to put it off, but let's just get into it, man. You can't win them all. So I mean, it looks good. You got to give me that.
All right.
So,
I mean, yeah, it looks good. It looks
Fire is a firefighting simulator, and this is from the notes here, in which the player is in control of a helicopter that must douse the fire that takes a grip on one or more flats. All right, you can move your helicopter.
Flats means building.
That's right. Did you not know that?
I was informing the audience.
They know.
Some of them know.
Well, they're not in West Virginia. The player can move your helicopter, and this is one of those helicopters that's like the double. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's got like a gimmick here and then like another doodad.
Well, I don't know if that's what they were actually trying to do,
Listen,
but okay.
So it's got a big tail end, is what I'm saying.
Well,
it's like a cargo chopper.
Although you do fly your helicopter backwards.
Well, sometimes you do. So you can move the chopper in 4 directions and also hover using the water cannon. The player
more like a bucket.
Yeah, players can douse the flames. Water is in limited supply, but one of the rooftops allows the player to replenish the water supply. It's the one all the way to the right.
Never did that.
I did. You didn't know about it, did
Nope.
you? I knew it. The fire, like a real fire, will slowly and erratically expand in all directions. The player wins when the fire is put out, but loses if unsuccessful within 3 minutes. So, as the description mentioned, you've got 3 buildings that are, I think they did a decent job making buildings out of what they had.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they look good. Your chopper looks like a chopper, and you take off from one building, and you go across and try to put out the fire. The fire always starts in the farthest away building.
Yeah.
At the top of the screen, you've got a counter that tells you how much time you've got left. It counts up to 3 minutes. And then you've got a water counter. Start with 1,500 gallons of water. Not that much. And then for this, it's not.
Yeah.
And then you can replenish your supply if you go and basically land on the farthest building from the fire, starting out with these 2 T's on the top of it. That's where you land. So when you go over the fire, you'll see the fire represented. I mean, it looks like fire. It's wiggly lines that go back and forth.
It looks like fire generated on the pad.
Yeah, that's right. And so what you do is, and there's a list that you can see if you're watching at home. He's listing the program because this was written in Pet Basic there. What you do is you negotiate your way across the screen with your chopper. You put the chopper over the fire. You hit your button and you drop water on the fire. And as you drop the water, it will penetrate the fire more and more until you can hopefully take out like a whole, like 1 character-wide lane of fire.
Column of fire.
And you can go through the columns like that and put it out. Once you play this game for a while, you can put the fire out pretty easily.
Yes.
To be honest with you.
Yeah.
And you really don't even have to refill. But you can.
No, I did not know about the refill function at all.
Yeah.
I mean, anytime the fire would jump to the second building, because there's 3 buildings, and the fire can actually jump to the other buildings, which that's clever. If I wasn't over the second building when the thing jumped, I was just like, okay, I'll lose.
Yeah. Well,
it's an interesting mechanic.
Yeah.
The dumping of the water, it only extinguishes some of the flames.
Right.
And then you can dump more in that column, and it actually takes out more than you did the first time.
Yeah.
So it's a cascading effect.
And
it's
also,
kind of a neat mechanic.
We should mention that when you drop the water on the fire turns into an @ sign, which is like smoke. Right? That's what they're trying to simulate is smoke. So a few things about this. Number 1, I don't have a pet myself, and you don't either.
Meow.
But if you want to play this, know up front that it requires you to use the numb pad, which I didn't have, so I had to do a bunch of rigmarole to get to work. But I mean, this thing actually emulates quite easily. They've got the emulation for the Pet down pretty good, if I'm honest.
Oh, sure, sure.
I didn't have any trouble with it, but and I looked at a lot of games require that keypad,
the
numb pad, and so if you don't have the numb pad, you're going to have to figure out a way to transfer the keys over or whatever. The chopper, like I said, there are 3 buildings that get across the screen. The chopper is not going to win a speed race, that's for sure. The chopper is slow going across the screen. Yeah. It meanders at a sightseeing pace as it goes towards the fire. And once you get to the fire, you've got to be very careful when you drop the water because time is of the essence. And also, the best thing to do, I've learned, is when you get to the fire, work the fire side closest to the next building first.
Absolutely.
And
Stop
that way,
the spread.
that way you won't have to worry about it spreading. And then once you do that, you can pretty much take out the fire even at the slow pace you've been given.
Yeah.
You could waste tons of water if you want to, and still have enough to get it through. That's the game. I mean, there's not a whole lot to it. The sound is just some beeping and booping.
Yeah, nothing to write on that.
Yeah, it's not. This is not anything. I mean, still, it is sound. You're getting some sound. It's funny when we think about it. The original Pet, you had to literally solder in your own speaker. So the fact that not everything had sound because there was no sound.
Now, a few things that need to be said.
Go ahead.
The controls on this game, what you think would be simple, are garbage. The response time, the response on moving the helicopter and dropping the water is not good.
You think that was on purpose to simulate? Because you'll get going one way and you're begging to go the other way.
Yeah.
Or down, and it's the chopper's like, nah, we'll get around to it. It's like the keyboard buffer or something wasn't working right.
Yeah.
It's not the easiest thing to control. You get used to it though. I will say that.
Another thing worth noting. While you do have the ability to move up and down, outside of, I suppose, landing and getting more water, never needed. I never went up and down the.
Well, the only thing it does is, you could go all the way down to the fire and drop your water.
There's no need to do that.
Well, I mean, maybe it may make it. I never did it, but you can. It gives you the freedom to do it.
Well, I mean, yeah, but
give them that.
They don't really do anything with it. Graphics. They're fine.
Yeah.
I know what's building. I know what's fire.
I thought the fire was pretty clever, actually. I did a good job with the flames.
Yeah, I agree. The sound garbage. The gameplay loop itself, very simplistic. This is, well, like I said, I thought this was a commercially released game.
No.
I thought it maybe as like some kind of compilation, which I guess sort of it was. But knowing that this came in a magazine, or a
tape
sort
newsletter.
Of a magazine, that makes me feel a lot better about this game.
This reminds me of something we'd type in from like Rainbow or something.
Yes.
Back in the day.
Yeah.
And along those lines, it gets more. Hey, it's kind of fun. It's different. I've never played a game where you do this, Roy, per se.
Well, I mean, what do? You
drop water. You're a firefighter.
It's reverse Space Invaders.
Well,
except the Space Invaders
don't break it down. It can't sustain that. Jerk.
But no, should you run out and locate fire? No, you shouldn't.
Well,
However, it's so easy to find because you can play this right off of archive.org.
Yeah.
Along with a plethora of pet goodies.
And you can get these cursors like complete on tape, the whole tape. You can download the whole tape too if you want to. So.
But so would I do that? Would I load it into a web browser and look at it? Yeah, I'll do that because it's interesting to see how they did the fire, how they did the buildings. That aspect of it, I think, is enjoyable enough to give it 2-3 minutes of your time.
Plus, the cool thing is, since it's all done in BASIC, you can go in and tinker with it if you want to.
You don't want to tinker with it.
I might do that. So we got, believe it or not, we had a listener review here, Brent. If you can believe that. Our buddy Pajako took a look at this bad boy in his spare time. Good for you, Pajako. He writes, I kind of like this game. However, it's too slow and clunky to be fun most of the time. The graphics for its time and the fire is a really nice effect. The main issue for me is it takes forever to get across the screen, start putting out the fire, and depending on the random seed you start with, the fire can easily be out of control before you can even make it across the screen and start tackling it. That is true.
That is very true.
On some playthroughs, the fire has already reached the second building before I got to the first building, and at that point, you're fighting a losing battle. I will say, once the fire gets to the second building, you're probably boned.
Yeah, if you don't take it out immediately. If you're over top of it and it jumps, you can hit it, you're okay, but otherwise,
The game also has some bugs where when you try to press the keys too quickly, the game starts to do odd things. Like randomly dropping water when you try to move. Nice looking, good concept, but not a great game to play. 4 out of 10.
I think that's fair. I think everything he said was fair and accurate.
I think he missed a great game here. He needs to go back and It was an awesome game that we all love. That's what I think.
Watch out, Mario. Now we've got Helicopter Man.
That's right. You got it right. So, that was fire.
It sure was.
Brent. I kind of liked fire. Come on. Now, listen. You're talking a big game here, the Brent.
Yes.
What do you got? What did you bring to the table this week?
Meteorites.
That's it. Just jump right into
Bam.
it, eh?
Absolutely. Holy cow. Let's talk about a good game.
Now, wait a minute.
Now, before we talk about what this game is, how it's played, and all that stuff, we've got to look back, way back, to who published this game.
All right.
And that is a little company called Supersoft.
All right.
Supersoft.
You know it's good.
Remember that name.
All right.
1981, Supersoft. And Supersoft has its own interesting story that we are going to touch on because it's too interesting not to.
Yeah, do it.
Founded in 1978, Aaron, they started out working with hardware. And guess what they made for the Commodore Pet in the hardware department?
I don't know.
This is going to blow your mind.
Yeah.
Standard resolution of the Pet,
Yeah.
80 by 50.
Yeah.
Okay? That's small. That's not a good resolution.
No, that's standard for business.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. You know what they did?
I don't know.
Add one card to the Pet to raise the resolution to 320 by 200.
Oh.
Holy crap.
They made a video add-on.
They made a video card for the Commodore
You
Pet.
sure it just wasn't like one of those magnifying glasses they put in front of the screen?
No. This gave them a lot of confidence. And it made them go, wow, we're doing some good stuff here. So they started to break into software. And while their main business was doing business applications, because that's what the Pet's for, they did dabble in games. And the founder of Supersoft was, I'm going to probably mess up these names, Peter Calver and Pearl Wellard.
All right.
Now, I'm not sure what happened to Pearl Wellard. I can't find any definitive information. I don't know if he passed on. I don't know if
Was Pearl a guy?
I don't know.
I've never heard of a guy named Pearl.
Well, now you have. Maybe. So, but Peter Calver took this business and he did a lot with it. The first thing he did was spin the business off to a different company when he purchased Audio Jeric, I think is how you pronounce it.
Sucks.
Well, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
And he took that, and that's really where he did the bulk of his software stuff.
Yeah.
But to get to that point, he did some stuff with Supersoft. Supersoft, by the way, Aaron, still technically a company today. While it hasn't produced anything since the 1990s.
Yeah.
Peter is still keeps the business license up, and the company is still technically in existence. Okay, so what did he do? He said we're going to start making some clones. He made a Pac-Man clone called the Super Glooper. Made the game we're talking about today.
He's not good with names, is he?
But he also did one of the first time in gaming history, I can't pin down if this is the actual first time, but it's definitely one of the first time, licensed a property.
Oh.
And he licensed Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Oh, okay.
And he said, you know what? Bam, we got this. Got the license for a song because this was before the huge boom of Hitchhikers.
Yeah.
And said, we're going to make a text adventure game off of this license.
Oh,
that's what he did.
That's where that came from?
So he took that license, started giving it some polish, made a text adventure game. Well, what happened next was Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy folks said, what are you doing? You can't have the license to this game, and sued them.
But I thought you said he bought the license.
Well, he did, sort of. He bought it from the individual, not from the company that... No, I'm sorry, it was the other way around. He bought it from the company that published the book
Yeah.
but not the man who wrote it.
Okay.
So the man who wrote it sued them and won. So they could no longer sell Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Douglas Adams, I believe,
Yes,
is the guy.
you are correct. And it was not Supersoft's fault because the book publisher actually paid Supersoft's legal fees.
Yeah.
So Supersoft was in the clear, and they had to pull the game off the shelves, destroy all the unsold copies, re-release the game as Cosmic Capers.
Okay.
But and Cosmic Capers actually sold. I mean, it sold like crap, but it sold okay.
Yeah.
Because it was basically the same game. It was actually an upgraded version of Hitchhikers. Because Hitchhikers,
was this a text game?
Text game, yeah. And they shoehorned in the plot.
Because they ultimately did release a text version.
Well, Infocom,
yeah,
made a version of the game.
Interesting.
So that's some of the fun behind Supersoft. Now, Peter Cavler is still active today. He is credited with some big games, Super Loops, Super Tennis Champs, made a lot of cricket games for the Commodore 64. That's where
He didn't make the Gooch one, did he? Is Gooch one of the ones he did?
No.
Okay.
No.
I played that one.
But he also did stuff like Krusty Super Funhouse. He did arcade games.
Yeah.
You remember Exterminate in the arcade where you place the hand and you
with
kill
the
bugs?
spray bottle or
Lost
whatever?
tons of money on that, he said.
Oh, he did that one?
But yeah.
That game looked weird, man.
They were part of that. So, very interesting character. He also, just to update on what he's doing now, he runs a website called Lost Cousins, which goes and teams up family members, lost family members to ancestors in their past. A genealogy type thing. That's his main focus now. But the dude is very, he's open for interviews. Not that we did any, but I read a lot of interviews that he gave. And his game making days are behind him. Now he's more focused on his website, but he says he's got drawers and drawers and drawers of ideas. He's an idea guy. He loves coming up with stuff.
Yeah.
It's just, you can't implement it. And he said he knew by the early 80s they weren't going to be able to keep up. Things were getting too, they were a small publisher, a small company, and he did farm out and do some work for some other people, but he knew that this wasn't going to be something he could maintain, and that's why he went other directions and opened up the website, stuff like that. So big thumbs up to that guy. He got screwed in a couple ways, but I think ultimately pretty successful career, and he's still out there today. So let's talk about Meteorite and what it is on the Pet. And if you want to bring up the big screen, let these lovely people see this amazing footage. In Meteorite, you are basically playing Missile Command. You have a space setting where you have gun buildings at the bottom, or just buildings. They don't have to necessarily see guns because the guns don't come out, the shots don't come out like in Missile Command. And meteorites are falling from the sky. You've got to shoot them down before they hit the buildings. Now, if a meteorite hits the ground but doesn't hit a building, you don't lose anything. The ground shakes. It has this really cool effect, but you don't actually lose the building. It's not just if it makes it to the surface. The meteorites look really nice.
They're pretty round.
Yeah, they do really amazing work with what they've got to work with. And the middle square has some different symbols just to kind of give it a different look. D.E. Anthony, I don't know what the D or the E stands for. I looked forever trying to give this guy credit. But Mr. Anthony is the guy who actually programmed the game. And he did a really good job. It's a very solid game.
Yeah.
It plays in waves. You start on level 0. You can get to level 5, and then the game kind of loops. It's a score-based game. You're just trying to get high score. There aren't advancements in your weaponry, but as the game goes on, it does get harder and faster. The sound is the basic beeps and boops. The graphics are outstanding, and the gameplay is pretty smooth. When you shoot, the game does pause, and when a meteor hits the ground, or the meteorite hits the ground, it does kind of pause the game, shakes the screen a little bit, does the effect. But past that, moving the cursor around to shoot and the meteorites coming down, super smooth, very nice action. I was very impressed at what they could do. Difficulty-wise, the game starts out too easy, I feel. You can get through waves 0 through 3 without much difficulty, but on 4 and 5, you are really moving around the screen trying to get everything. At the end of every level, you get a base back. Aaron, what did you think of Meteorite?
Well, I will say, I played this after I played Fire. And, I mean, this was a real letdown from Fire. No, I'm just kidding. It's way better. Listen, they did a great job. The background, I mean, you feel like you're in like a, I don't know if in my mind, I was on like an alien world, and you were like protecting the
moon
base.
Like
the moon, yeah. The asteroids are surprisingly cool looking. I like the gun. Now, you know, one of the things you're going to have probably with every pet game like this, an arcadey type one, is but you got to move around with the cursors, you know, with the keys and the you know, it's not what I would call like using a mouse. You know what I mean? But I thought it was pretty good. It's pretty fun. It gets crazy.
Yeah.
Like the amount of meteors you get like later on, it's like tons.
It's impressive. Well, and the reason why it runs so well, it's written in machine code. So it really gives it a chance to run at full speed.
Yeah.
And really get in there and do the job right.
Yeah. I was impressed. It actually is sort of fun. You know, you're right. There's a pause whenever you hit the fire button. But it's forgivable. Again, you've got to understand the limitations of a game from 1981. Yeah. Given what the parameters they had to work with. It's very arcadey, though. You can play for score. It keeps the high score. It's got a thing that tells you the level at the top. It's neat. It's great when an asteroid doesn't blow up one of your buildings.
Yeah.
You feel good about that. You know, because that happens and stuff. You know, obviously they played some Missile Command.
Yeah.
To get the idea for this. But they took I like the spread of the buildings. It actually plays sort of differently than you would play like a Seawolf or Missile Command, because you're used to stuff being in a certain spot. These meteors fly in different patterns, and like I said, when you get later on, like I didn't really pay attention to how far I got, but I was you know, it was getting to the point where, I mean, they were like, I don't know how many asteroids you can have or meteors on the screen at once, but it's something like
that's
10.
a lot. Yeah,
it was like a ton, and they were everywhere. And you get to the point where you're boned.
And something that's very unique about this game that makes it vastly different from Missile Command is the meteorites can go off the left side of the screen and appear on the right side of the screen, and your cursor can do the same thing too. So it's not just a cheap difficulty move, but it makes the angles that these things come in at, you think, oh, well, I'm fine, that's not going to hit anything, and then it goes through the screen and it hits the thing just on the edge, the base just on the edge.
Yeah.
So that made it very challenging.
Yeah, actually, the screen wrap, I don't know if I've played one of these that does that, and it works.
Yeah.
You know, this game is sort of like, I'll tell you what it reminded me of. It's like it's sort of a combination of a Missile Command and that game for the Intellivision, Astro Blaster, where you have to protect there was I felt sort of like that as well. Hey, that's a good combo, brother.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so yeah, I give this one a thumbs up. I really enjoyed it.
Now, I did. I really dug into this game, Aaron.
Yeah.
And I found 2 magazine things that I want to read a few snippets of.
All right, go.
One is an advertising from Supersoft. This is them trying to sell their game with a magazine advertisement. An all-action game in the style of Invaders. Your mission to defend 7 moon bases against a shower of meteorites by blasting them out of the sky. If you survive the first wave, there are 5 more to face, and then Well, you'll find out, and you'll find out because the game just starts over.
Yeah. That's better than saying, then the game loops.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll find out.
The graphics are really superb. Just watch the way the ground shakes when the meteorite crashes into the lunar surface. And then it goes on. How much do you think this game was at launch, Aaron, in pounds?
I'd say 10 pounds.
8 pounds.
That's close, yeah.
So I think that's a very good deal.
Yeah.
Now, in that same magazine, the magazine people actually wrote a review on the game. And let me see if you can pick up the subtle difference here,
right.
Aaron. The popular arcade games Missile Command and Asteroids have been combined to transfer to your pet screen. Called Meteorites, the aim of the game is to protect 7 bases from a swarm of meteorites descending from the heavens. The only way to survive is to blast rock showers with your laser gun, but you will find out it often serves only to shatter the meteorites into smaller pieces, yet just as deadly. Altogether, you have to fight off 6 waves of meteorite storms, scoring points on the hazards on your way with each hit. Other hazards to avoid are alien ships which swoop down intermittently to fire at bases under your protection. Shoot them down for bonus points.
This is another game.
No, this is a review for Meteorite.
So that guy didn't play the game.
The guy did not play the game because that is not in the game.
None of that. I was going to say that's all, unless there's a version we don't know about.
No, I looked. I thought that too. I thought maybe this was released in a different system. No.
That game sounds even better.
This reviewer, and this is it's not like this was some kind of preview and it didn't make it. And he goes on to actually call Supersoft out by name, that it's going to be on the Pet. He actually even talks about the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy game.
Yeah.
And how that's also come to the Pet from Supersoft. So the guy did research onto that, but never played the game because the meteorites blowing apart into smaller fragments and the alien ship coming down are not part of the game.
Maybe he played like a early. No, you're not buying it. Okay.
No, the guy did not play the game.
Well,
man,
interesting.
1980s computer magazines. I love it.
That never changed, did it?
And for those wondering, this was Computers and Video Game Magazine issue 1.
Wait a minute.
1.
Electronic Computers?
No.
It's not the one I read, is
No.
it? Okay.
Computers and Video Game Magazine.
Okay. I was going to say, because I would have looked that up. Pretty interesting. We had a listener review, Brent, if you would like to partake.
Absolutely.
Our good buddy Pajako also gave this one a whirl. He says, we can't do Missile Command. What's the next best thing? Meteorites, a fun and frantic game that has all the elements of a good arcade game. The game moves at a good pace. The target reticle moves quickly, so you feel in control of the game. It's certainly quicker than the helicopter.
Yes.
I managed to make it to the end of the game where everything resets. But at levels 4 and 5, the action gets very... Yeah, boy, this is true. At levels 4 and 5, the action gets very hectic. And by the end of the game, I was down to 2 bases and was panicking. The Meteorite graphics are a little samey. They had different cores, but I didn't notice any mechanical differences between them. However, it didn't detract from a fun game that would have me coming back for more had I owned this system and game originally. The graphics are, while simple, are great, and the sound is brilliant. And the whole screen shaking effect when a meteorite thumps down is awesome. 8 out of 10. Puts high praise from our good buddy Chaco.
I think that's very fair.
I thought the ground shaking was cool. It's a good idea too.
Yeah.
And I like it. If only they could have made the game was in that review, we'd be really laughing. So good stuff. So before we close out here on the Pet. Any parting thoughts? What do you think of this thing?
The Pet is a very mixed beast.
Yeah.
Like I said, I looked at a lot of games, and the system had a lot of text games, a lot of poker, those type of things, and the games that it did have for it were average at best. However, there were certainly some highlights. Meteorite was definitely probably the best game I played on the Pet. I'm not saying it's the best game for the Pet. I'm saying of the games I played, I would put it at the top.
I will say I like these old systems because it's like the Wild West.
Absolutely.
That's what makes it fun.
Yep.
And it's fun to give these old games a twirl occasionally, because you never know what you're going to find when you give it a shot. Speaking of which, you never know what you're going to find when you twirl the wheel. There it is. Now, Brent, it's been a long time since you actually fiddled with the wheel, eh? You want to go over what's in this thing. By the way, I will go ahead and say that the new piece, the Retro Rewind piece, this Sega Saturn, Brent.
What new piece did you put on the wheel?
The new piece that we've got this time around is, let me see here. I've got to remember what it was.
Light gun games?
Light gun games. That's it from Herms. You probably want to thank Buck Owens for suggesting the Pet.
Yes, actually, that again, anytime you can find new, fun, and interesting stories, which I did. I spent way more time deep diving the stories behind these games than I did playing them, and I enjoyed every single second of it. I love it.
You have a thought on what you'd like to see on the wheel this
Burger
week?
games, baby.
Oh, God.
I'm begging for it.
I hope we don't get that. Give it a whirl, dude. Man, that was
You don't mind if I spin it like a man, do you?
Oh, would you get out of here with that? And the winner is... What is the winner? The Ace-Tronic MPU 1000, suggested by Hermsky. What is that? We don't know, but it's been on there for a while, so we're going to do it. Read that again, Brent. What is the
Ace-Tronic MPU 1000.
All right, Ace-Tronic MPU 1000 coming up next week, Brent. You got to get excited about that. Are you excited about that?
I don't know.
Looks like we're going to be learning. We're going to be learning quite a bit this coming around.
I mean, this week was a huge research week for me, and I enjoyed it a lot, so maybe I can get another good fun.
I've got a couple of things I want to talk about here before we take this thing to the house. We don't have any big shows coming up or anything, but I want to mention that if you are listening to this or watching it in the show notes, you will see a link to friends looking for someone to donate a kidney. If you have anyone that or any lists, I wanted to put that link out there to see if he can find a donor for his friend. Always sad when that happens, and so we've all got to band together to help people that are in need and have the right blood types and stuff. So
yeah, this is not a game, guys. You could really go out there and save somebody's life.
That's right. So I will post a link in the show notes so you can check it out. And if you're listening to the audio, I'll post it in the show notes there as well. One other thing, Brent. Last week we had our Odyssey 2 / video pack episode. Great episode. I covered a game called Shays Maxim. All right.
Yes.
And I remember saying, I was like, boy, someone should take the mantle up. This game's got good bones, and they can really do something with it. Someone did. In less than a week, someone took up the challenge. It's our old buddy, Happy Coding, who works on the ZX Spectrum. He did Asteroids. He did that brilliant charity event Christmas game. He's got a game going that's going to blow your socks off. I've seen the early builds,
it
is amazing what he's done in the span. In 4 hours after the show, he already had the basis of the game programmed in.
Yeah. He's
working with a top-shelf graphics guy and has a great music. This is going to be awesome. It's still a little bit early. I don't want to show anything before it's done, but I suspect it won't be too long before he's done. So this goes to show, if you want something bad enough and you know a guy who's got the jack, you can get it done. I couldn't believe it in less than a week.
It's crazy.
You can move the guy around everything. It's going to be a lot of fun, and he's made some additions to it that are going to make it even better than the video pack version. I'm looking forward to it. I love that.
Absolutely.
Well done, Happy. Do you got anything you want to talk about before we take things to the house?
I really like butter.
There you go. Well, I can tell. So next week, the Ace-Tronic MPU something should be good. And
you can't guarantee that.
Okay.
You can't guarantee that.
Listen, it may be better than fire. I'll give you that.
Oh, please.
So, until next week, please spay or neuter your Commodore Pet. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us today. Special thanks to Duncan Styles for our vector style graphic and Bart Pitt for our amazing music. Would you like to help keep ARG spinning? You can do so at patreon.com/ARG Presents, just like these fine folks. Mario Ramey, Z9K9, Jerry Dennington, John Dykeman, Retroalgae, Airshack, Texas Foosballer, Sundown, Oram, Super Tech Boy, David Terrence, Mr. B, Roushie, Graham W. Vetke, Dave Velociraptor, Bernhard Lucas, Steve Rasmussen, Anthony Jarvis, Bitter Blitter, Pajako 6502, Kevin Bean, Andy Jones, Andy Craig, Rob Black O'Hara, Jason Warrens, Mitsuyama, Chris Foles, Frodo NL, The Slow North, John Schaller, The On Collective, Gary Heather, Terry Howard, Olaf Hope, and Rollo. You can join us live every Sunday, 10 a.m. EDT on Twitch. Hope to see you there.